All right, let's jump straight into this deep dive. Today, we're turning our attention to a difficult but really vital topic, chemsex addiction.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one.
It's an area often kept in the shadows,
Hmm.
but bringing it into the light feels like the first step towards understanding and, well, towards change.
Absolutely.
We've got some really powerful material here, a very raw personal story, and some, frankly, stark statistics that show just how big this issue is.
Mm.
And this whole deep dive, it's tailored for you based directly on the source material you shared with us.
Yes, and the source we're digging into today is pretty compelling. It's from a YouTube video, features a transformation specialist sharing his own story.
His own story.
Yeah, really openly, about being in the chemsex scene, his addiction, recovery, the whole path.
Okay.
So our mission here is to take that source, pull out the key insights, help you grasp the reality of this scene.
Yeah.
Look at the scale of it.
The numbers involved.
Exactly. And explore the potential ways forward, the paths to change, but only based on what's in that specific source material.
Got it. Okay, let's unpack this personal journey first then. The source starts, you said, with a really honest account from someone right in the middle of that lifestyle. What does it tell us? What was that like?
Well, it paints a picture of being deeply, deeply embedded in the chemsex scene, as the source calls it, struggling specifically with sex addiction combined with meth, methamphetamine, and GHB, and also using poppers.
Wow, that's quite a combination. Sounds incredibly destructive. How does he describe actually being in that, the feeling of it?
He uses some really strong words, calls it dark, debilitating, physically and emotionally degrading,
Degrading.
and spiritually basically dead. He says it got so bad he reached a point of actually begging God to die, just didn't want to live anymore.
Begging to die. That just gives you a real sense of the absolute despair. Were there specific moments he talks about? Things that really underline that feeling?
Oh, definitely. He talks about feeling completely lost, hopeless, empty, just void of living.
Void of living.
Yeah, and gives these vivid details like being out at 5, 6, 7 in the morning, desperate, looking for the next bag of drugs,
Oh, man.
and seeing people going off to their normal day to work and just wishing, desperately wishing he could be like them. Or being stuck inside, getting high, looking for hookups online on a beautiful day, knowing life was passing him by but feeling trapped, utterly unable to break free.
He used the phrase deeply rooted and ingrained.
Exactly. That feeling of being completely stuck in it.
And the source mentioned other addictions playing a part before things escalated.
Yeah, it seems there was functioning alcoholism happening alongside what he identifies as the core addiction, which was sex addiction.
Okay, so that was the base.
Right. But then, introducing crystal meth and GHB, he describes that as turning the sex addiction into this monster.
A monster.
Yeah. Said it just took over his whole life, destroyed his morals, his values, made him feel like he was living like an animal in a human body.
Just primal.
Right. The source doesn't really get into the why pharmacologically,
Yeah.
but frames those specific drugs as the things that just blew it all up.
And this is where it gets, well, incredibly tragic, really. The source talks about serious consequences, doesn't it? Doesn't shy away from that.
No, not at all. States directly that this path, drugs, sex, booze, led to a horrible demise and humiliation.
Humiliation.
And he details a specific incident, cybersex, with a high school teen he met on Craigslist,
Oh, wow.
which resulted in years behind bars, as he puts it, and then lifetime registration as a sex offender.
That's heavy. Hearing about consequences like that is tough. But despite all that history, that devastation, he shares where he is now.
Yes, and that's the powerful turn, isn't it? He's now nearly 12 years sober and clean.
12 years.
From alcohol, crystal meth, and sex addiction. And he talks about this immense gratitude for the life he has now. Peaceful, serene, a complete turnaround.
That's incredible. Quite a journey from rock bottom.
Definitely. And moving from that really personal story, the source then shifts gears a bit to give some context with statistics, trying to show just how common these struggles actually are.
Okay, yeah, stats can sometimes do that, put a personal story into a wider frame. What do the numbers in the source say about sex addiction specifically?
Well, according to the studies he references, the figures are, they're huge. Nearly 30 million Americans reportedly struggle with sex addiction.
30 million in the U.S. alone.
Yeah. And globally, the figure cited is 1.6 billion people.
1.6 billion.
Billion. He puts it in perspective, says, counting that high, one person a second, would take over 12 years.
Wow. That's almost impossible to properly comprehend. It just hammers home the scale of this, doesn't it? Far beyond anyone's story. What about meth use?
The source points to 2021 figures. 1.6 million Americans had a methamphetamine use disorder then.
Okay.
And the really tragic part, nearly 33,000 people died that same year from overdoses involving meth-related drugs.
33,000 deaths. That's sobering. And the source suggests the stuff often starts young.
That seems to be the case, yeah. It mentions 2.5 million Americans aged 12 and up have used crystal meth at some point.
12 and up.
And the average age someone apparently starts using crystal meth is cited as 23.
Okay.
But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The comparison the source makes between when addiction starts and when recovery starts.
Oh.
The average age sex addiction reportedly gets its hooks in is 18. But the average age someone actually starts recovering from sex addiction, that's given as 37.
18 to 37, that's nearly 2 decades.
Exactly. So when you look at those averages presented in the source, what does that suggest?
It suggests, well, potentially a really long, hard battle.
Yeah.
Decades, maybe, for people caught in these cycles before they can find a way out, start that recovery process.
It really highlights that potential duration, yeah. A long time spent struggling before breaking free.
So after laying out the problem, the personal cost, the sheer scale, the source offers some hope, some actual strategies.
Yes, exactly. And that's crucial. It offers hope through some simple strategies that helped him, presented as potential first steps for someone else who might be struggling right now.
Okay. What are they?
He lays out 3 strategies, frames them as ways to start letting some light into your life, acknowledges, they might not stop the addiction overnight.
Right, not a magic bullet.
No, but they're meant to begin the process, start moving towards freedom. And he says they get progressively sort of more challenging.
Okay, let's take the first one. What is it?
The first strategy is all about tackling the secrecy. It's bring it to the light.
Bring it to the light.
By telling someone you trust. And not just anyone, someone who loves you unconditionally, who won't judge you. Someone you can be totally raw and real with.
And why is that act of just telling someone seen as so important?
He uses this powerful metaphor. Darkness cannot live in light. So just the act of sharing it honestly, speaking those addictions out loud to another person, even if you're nowhere near ready to stop using or acting out, that starts to chip away at the power the secrecy holds. It's framed as like the very first stage, getting your mind, your spirit ready to maybe heal down the line.
That makes a lot of sense. Taking it out of hiding reduces its power. Okay, what's the second strategy the source suggests?
The second one involves your phone contacts.
Your phone? How?
Identify everyone connected to your meth use and your sex addiction. Party contacts, hookups, dealers, people you met in that scene.
Okay.
And then the suggestion is to compartmentalize them. Put them in a separate file or folder in your phone contacts. Keep them totally separate from your everyday contacts, family, friends, work.
So creating a deliberate sort of digital distance.
Exactly that. He acknowledges that just deleting them might feel impossible at first.
Like cutting off a lifeline, maybe?
Precisely. So separating them is presented as a first step. A way to start practicing separating yourself from the people who are direct triggers, who are part of that addictive world.
It connects to how addiction itself involves compartmentalizing life, right?
That's the link he makes, yeah. You already have your addiction life separate from your normal life, so this is kind of mirroring that, but in a way that starts to give you control over the separation.
Interesting. Okay, and the third strategy?
The third one targets the rituals.
Rituals.
Yeah, a whole process leading up to engaging in the chemsex scene.
Yeah.
All the preparation.
Like before the actual event.
Exactly. Making the plans, contacting people, maybe scoring the drugs, arranging things, finding parties or hookups on apps. All that stuff you do before you actually use or hook up.
Okay, so what's the strategy there?
It's to find someone you trust. Maybe the same person from step 1. Maybe someone else who you can call or talk with while you are doing those preparations.
While you're actually planning to go through with it.
Yes. That's the key part. Even if you still intend to go ahead. The idea, according to the source, is that just talking about the planning, the ritualistic steps with a trusted person, even if they don't try to stop you, it can help that whole ritualism leading up to the act lose some of its power, its grip.
So it's interrupting the autopilot almost, bringing awareness to it.
Kind of, yeah. Disrupting that almost automatic sequence.
So just to recap those 3 steps from the source, it's about radical honesty with someone safe, creating deliberate distance from triggers like contacts, and then interrupting the actual rituals leading up to the behavior, even if you're not yet able to stop the behavior itself.
Exactly. That's how they're framed. as practical, doable first steps. For someone who feels stuck, maybe hopeless, but had that little flicker of wanting something different,
A way to start making cracks in the walls of the addiction.
right. A way to begin finding a path out, finding some hope. And, woven through all of this difficult stuff in the source material, there's this really consistent underlying message.
Yeah. What's that?
It's a message of hope, definitely, but also of inherent worth, aimed right at anyone listening who might be struggling.
That sounds really important. What's the core of that message?
The source basically asserts really strongly that deep down, underneath all the addiction, the behaviors, the history, anyone struggling is fundamentally a lovable, wonderful, beautiful person. Someone who deserves peace, deserves love, deserves to be cared for.
So separating the person from the addiction, saying your worth isn't defined by your struggles.
Precisely. And he grounds this belief in something specific. He
Yeah.
says, look, if you are listening to this, if you're seeking out information like this,
Uh-huh.
that itself is proof. Proof that deep down, some part of you, a fundamental part, genuinely wants a different life. A clean, beautiful, sober life.
So the act of seeking help or information is evidence of that core desire.
That's how the source sees it, yeah. Evidence of that inherent worth shining through, wanting something better.
Wow. Okay. We've really taken a deep dive today into some challenging, heavy territory. We've explored that powerful personal story of struggle with chemsex addiction. We've looked at the, frankly, staggering scale of the issue through the stats shared in the source. And we've looked closely at those initial practical strategies offered, a way to maybe start that journey towards change.
Yeah.
It's definitely clear from the source that the path isn't easy. It takes immense courage, support,
Absolutely.
but that message of hope, of inherent worth, that comes through really powerfully too.
It really does. And it leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it?
Like what?
Well, the source talks about addiction being like this powerful spell, right? And we saw the stats suggesting it can be a decades-long battle for many people.
Yeah, that 18 to 37 figure was striking.
Exactly. So considering how formidable addiction is described, and then looking at these initial strategies presented, bringing darkness to light, separating contacts, disrupting rituals, they seem almost small in comparison.
I see what you mean.
So the question it raises for me is, what might be the real profound power hidden inside, taking just one of those small, seemingly simple steps? What can one tiny action actually do against such a huge opponent?
That's a great question. The power of the small step in the face of a massive challenge, something definitely to consider as you process this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.